reflected in the Constitution?
Well, geez, I'd love Bob to go first on this one.
I'd like you to repeat that one. Seriously, I need you to repeat that.
Bob and I have done some debates recently, and usually about three-quarters way through it, we're rolling. I love it. You know, it's interesting when you think about the issues of our constitutional rights, and Congress has dealt with some interesting pieces of legislation. And some pieces have been picked away at. When you look at the bill, the FISA bill, it gave immunity to telecom companies when they end up eavesdropping on you and find out later they violated your civil rights. I think was the wrong thing to do. The Real ID card, which I'm totally opposed with, again, I think it starts to violate our constitutional rights. I think when you look at the issue, and I think all of us will agree on this one, when there is attacks on the Second Amendment, which are right to bear arms, I think we are very strong in protecting that, all of us in some form or another. But I think it's important. One thing about Alaskans, I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican, we have a libertarian, you hear that there? I know you're Alaskan Independent Party, but libertarian streak that goes through us in protecting individual rights. You know, when you think about our Constitution here and the privacy right that we have built into our Constitution, it's the strongest of any state in this country. So we come from a state, and especially certainly in Washington, D.C., we come from a state already really strong in protecting the rights of individuals. In a lot of ways, we have this belief that we don't want government in our personal lives, and these areas of stripping our constitutions down, so constitutional rights. So you will see me as strong as I've been as mayor, as well as an Anchorage Assembly member, and also in my work on the National Conference of Mayors, where fighting on these issues are very important to us.
Thank you. Don?
Well, we have the Second Amendment, he just mentioned it, very strong. We have the First Amendment, very strong. I work very hard for those two especially. I am disappointed in the Patriot Act. I have to tell you that right up front. That's another classic example where every time we pass bad legislation, it's under duress. We do it rapidly and make mistakes, and I will take responsibility of TSA. I hope you all don't boo me. But I was boycotted because I didn't do it quickly. The Senate passed it in about 3 days after 9/11, and by 100 to nothing. And I said, we're not going to do that. We're going to take our time. And we did take our time. It took us 10 weeks to get a good bill. I think it's a good bill. We made one little mistake. We said, you have to apply science and technology, and they have not done that. And so that's a lot of your freedoms are taken away right there. And we have to be careful of that. So I'm very much cognizant of when we do things in a rapid fashion, we make bad mistakes. I just voted on the bailout bill. My opponent said he reluctantly would vote for it. How can you vote for something reluctantly? Either you do or you don't. It's yes or no. There isn't two of us in that room. And so consequently, I think I made the right vote. And one of the reasons I made the right vote, we transferred power to the executive branch from the legislative branch. And that's against the Constitution. And so those are the type of things I'd like to protect the American people, especially my Alaskan citizens, First Amendment and the Second Amendment, and we'll work on down the line.
Thank you. Bob?
You all have my leaflet in front of you, and there are 2 to 4 minute video clips from my website where I explain these things. I no longer use the term constitutional rights because you don't get your rights from the Constitution. There is, in fact, a constitution to the Constitution. It's called the Declaration of Independence, and it says that you have unalienable rights, and they are given to you by God. If you look at the Constitution, you do not have the right to free speech in the First Amendment. It says, Congress shall make no law abridging the right to free speech and press. That's quite a difference, because if it said the people have the right to free speech, it would give you something, which it can whipsaw and contort and turn a straight line into a pretzel or a Z, which the courts do anyway. In fact, it says you don't get your right to keep and bear arms from the Second Amendment. It says that right shall not be infringed. These are all pre-existing rights. So every federal law which tries to do something like, how about me trying to get on an airplane with a titanium hip? If the private carrier was still the security agent, I would enter that airplane on the conditions that they tell me. It's their plane, and if I have to go through a groin pat search, then it's their airplane. But in fact, they violate the Fourth Amendment, which says that people shall be secure in their persons, papers, and effects. So now that the TSA is now under federal control, they are openly violating the Fourth Amendment by deciding I'm guilty until proven innocent. We have to understand, if you read the preamble to the Bill of Rights, not the preamble to the Constitution, it says this: a number of states were afraid that the government would abuse its powers, and we need more restrictive clauses. So you're not getting rights from the Bill of Rights. You're getting more restrictions clarified on the federal government. When we understand that premise, we might be able to be free again.
Thank you. Liz?
I think Senator Stevens would say that the most important thing that he could do to protect the rights of all Alaskans and all citizens in this country is to do what he can to encourage children and adults alike to become educated citizens of their state, their community, and their country. An educated citizenry can understand what their rights are and can make wise decisions regarding who they want to represent them and what kind of laws they believe should be passed to govern them. He is certainly, without question, as everyone knows, a very strong supporter of Second Amendment rights and individual rights like the ability for Alaskans to be able to travel freely back and forth to Canada. He's worked very hard to get exceptions to the passport rule for travel back and forth between Alaska and Canada. But again, the overarching thing is that every citizen has a responsibility to protect his or her own rights. And the best way of doing that is, in fact, to give you all the resources that you need to help educate our students to become responsible citizens and adults.
Thank you.
This will be our last question before our closings, and we'll be starting with Don on this one. Standardized tests currently play the significant role in judging and ranking school success. What other indicators should also be considered in determining school success and gauging our students' academic growth and achievement?
Well, I've got 2 minutes to answer that question, and that'll take about 2 hours. I'm not one who believes in standardized tests. I'm one of those few people. I can't believe that we've got caught into this leave no child behind, and 648 tries to solve some of those problems. I do believe in testing, but is it standardized, and by what standard are we basing this test on? And we start teaching for the test, and that doesn't teach the student as a whole. I'm one that, you know what, right or wrong or indifferent, I happen to believe in the 3 R's, but I also believe in a student sometimes does not come to the flowering point until later on in the years, yet he's being tested and failed. And you've been failed. And the school's been failed. How do we change that? Maybe we want to adjust the test. Not make it easier, make it more realistic to what issue we're dealing with and what locality we're dealing with, and also. This is a question that's always bothered me. As a teacher, I knew students that were not quite there yet. But if I gave them standardized tests, they failed. And I don't think it was fair to that student, because maybe they would be there next year, or maybe in 6 months, or maybe in 6 weeks. So when we say standardized and we give them a certain day, we're jeopardizing, I believe, the learning curve of that student. And so I'm not a big fan of that. And I just want you to know right now that whether we can change it or not, maybe you've got some ideas. How can we change it? Do we need standardized tests? Are we basing our education on the test? Or are we trying to educate the child? And that's the key of what you should be doing.